Ijaz Haider is a security analyst. He joins us from the Pakistani city of Lahore. We now know, of course, Ijaz, thank you so much for joining us. Islamabad and New Delhi themselves confirming this ceasefire has come into effect. First of all, just give us a reaction in Lahore. Do you hear noise in the streets? Are people outside celebrating?
Well, actually, they've gone back home. I mean, they were celebrating. The drones were up there. Lots of them were just photographing them. And so the fun is over. So people are now tired. They've gone home and maybe waiting for the next round.
From a security point of view, Ijaz, what did you make of the actions of the two sides since Wednesday?
Well, India's premise since 2016 has been two-pronged. One is that something happens. India blames it on Pakistan. India gets the international support. India has escalation dominance because it is conventionally superior. There's a small band in which it can play under the nuclear overhang. And the first and second round will go in favor of India. And then because international pressure will be on Pakistan, Pakistan will have no option but to back down. So this is the premise. It was, showcased by us in 2019 that this premise is flawed, but India tried to test us once again, this time in 2025, and it has found its premise and its own capabilities wanting. And I must say, and I've said this on other fora also, that the first night when the Indian attack was unfolding, they were just using standoff positions to release their payloads. They had no idea that the CAP, the Combat Air Patrol that the Pakistan Air Force was flying, they were actually in the engagement envelope of that CAP. And, these 5 kills, they were all silent kills, frankly. And that gave the Indian Air Force, once again, they got a lesson in 2019. They understood how we had dominated the electromagnetic spectrum. This time, once again, Pakistan Air Force has proven that. But after that, they needed to do something. You see, the issue here is that there is a Hindutva right-wing government in India, which has boxed itself in because its entire domestic politics is based on communalism inside India, rebel rousing against Muslims and other minorities, and also linking it up with Pakistan. We're not going to engage Pakistan. We will do things unilaterally, which they did in occupied Kashmir on August 5th, 2019. So these are things that have created a kind of environment for the government itself, and specifically for Prime Minister Narendra Modi, his National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, who seems to be the architect of this particular policy. And so the basic coterie that he has, including another Gujarati who's Amit Shah, who's his right-hand man. And so they boxed it. And one of the reasons this has actually gone on was not because the Indian military, and it's a professional military, they realized what they were up against. But they were actually pressured into this by the domestic political compulsions and of Narendra Modi and the kind of rhetoric that they had created, and which required that the rhetoric needs to be matched with some kind of action on the ground. It is really unfortunate because, as I've written elsewhere, there are other countries in this region. So by geographic default, they should not get exposed to the kind of hubris that has been shown by this particular Indian government.
Ijaz, well, the militaries of the two countries have learnt much from the past few days, because there seems to have been some kind of analysis, you're the expert, that there was a little bit of a novel element to the way they were probing each other with UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles, drones, and that sort of technology.
Yeah. So they started with an escalatory force. Air forces are always escalatory. And they realized, just like in 2019, that they were not really a match to what the Pakistan Air Force could bring to bear on that particular point of conflict. And so obviously then they had to resort to other ways. The Indian Air Force had to stay away from the engagement envelope to ensure that they don't lose any more birds. Drones, yes, this has been going on since the Azerbaijan-Armenian war. We have seen how drones were used. We've seen the use of drones during the Russo-Ukraine war, which is still ongoing. We've seen the use of drones in the genocidal conflict that's going on in occupied Palestine. So it was but natural that both sides have been developing drones. We have drones capability. We've got some imports from Turkey. We have our own indigenous drones also. We've got some drones from China. We've got the loitering and direct attack munitions. The Indians have been getting these Herops and Harpies and Heron Mark IIs from Israel. And they've also developed some of their own indigenous drones. They've got an MQ-1 from the United States. They actually have an order for about, I think, if I remember the number correctly, about 36 MQ-9s from the United States, which are still in the pipeline. So this was natural that they were going to do something like this. But the important point here to note is that while we were overmatching them at every rung of the escalation ladder, we also clearly sent out a strategic signal by saying that we are going to call the NCA meeting with the National Command Authority, not because we couldn't match them at the conventional level or we could not dominate the escalation ladder at that point, but simply to make the world understand that this particular escalation cycle is unfolding under the nuclear overhang. And while you can, stabilize at the lower rungs of the escalation ladder, as you move higher up on the escalation ladder, the danger increases. And then after that, a time can come where limited does not assuredly remains limited, and it goes somewhere else.
Just looking ahead to the discussions that are coming, according to the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, the two countries will send representatives to a neutral location to talk about a variety of issues, Rubio says. From a security and military point of view, what are going to be the main lines in that particular sphere that are going to be most important to the two countries as they look at the broad range of issues that they have to not necessarily come to an agreement on, but at least agree to disagree? They have to know where they stand on pretty much every important issue, correct?
Yes, we have had before the arrival on the scene of this particular Indian government, which is now in its third term, we had a comprehensive dialogue framework with India. It had various baskets. Sherpas had done a lot of work. And of course, at the political level also, during the mid-noughties, we came pretty close to even trying to figure out some kind of solution to the Kashmir problem. But after the arrival of this particular government, all of that has been defenestrated, frankly. And so we don't have any particular details. The governments officially on both sides have not talked about a neutral venue where they're going to talk about various issues. But I'm assuming that if that is correct, and obviously we will get to know if that's correct because the U.S. Secretary of State has talked about it, it will be, I'm assuming that it will be more than just the kinetic part of things. Because the kinetic part can be taken care of by the Director General's military operations also. If Rubio has talked about various aspects of the relationship, that's good news, because that once again tells everyone that the Indian policy of not engaging with Pakistan was never a viable policy. And the idea to unilaterally and frankly gratuitously decide whenever India wishes to do that, to attack Pakistan, is also something that is now out of the window. And I think that was one of our basic politico-strategic objectives in terms of countering the Indian aggression. And so, if it actually leads to, talks, even if in a third neutral venue, and if we move back to the comprehensive dialogue where we don't just talk about talks, but India actually starts walking the talk. There's the Indus Waters Treaty. Before that, the unilateral, revocation of special status for occupied Kashmir. And I must add that that particular thing does not directly affect us because we don't accept the instrument of accession. We don't accept that the occupied Kashmir ever acceded to India. So that's not. But the issue was that under the UN Security Council resolutions on Kashmir and a number of sub resolutions by the UNCIP on that very issue, India cannot unilaterally alter the status of occupied Kashmir. And so our problem with that particular move is that this actually tries to change the reality on the ground, whether demographically, whether otherwise, whether in terms of in terms of how the international world looks at that dispute. It's a live dispute on the UNSC agenda, and therefore there are a number of issues that would need to be debated. Right now, this was crisis management. But in order to prevent crises, any future crises, India and Pakistan have to sit down. India has to get rid of its hubris in terms of the balance of power in the region and accept the fact that Pakistan is not Egypt or Jordan to Israel, that India is not Israel, and Pakistan has its own capabilities, and therefore India has to talk to Pakistan and talk to Pakistan as an equal.
Ijaz Haider, thank you so much indeed for talking to us on TRT World. Very much appreciated.